when we're thinking about anything rate limiting related from an agent gateway perspective, whether it's local rate limiting, whether it's model failover, even just looking at metrics, logs, traces, there are a couple of different ways that we can do it, and that's what we're going to dive into via this video. So if you want to follow along from a hands-on perspective, the first thing that you're going to need is an Anthropic API key and an OpenAI API key. But if you don't have those, don't worry about it. You can still follow along from a theoretical perspective and then go through the implementation once you have those keys available. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up local rate limiting, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to save this YAML configuration here, or you can even find the 3 configurations already saved under this repository. So we're going to set up this gateway with an OpenAI backend. It's going to use GPT 3.5. And then we have a couple of routes here, along with some policies, a method of authenticating to the backend, which in this case is OpenAI. And then notice here, we're setting some rate limits. So pretty much what I'm saying here is I can have 1 token every 100 seconds. Now, obviously this isn't realistic here, but it gives us a good test in terms of like looking at rate limiting and seeing how it actually works underneath the hood. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy this command here, and then I'm going to run the configuration. All right, and I'm going to pop open the UI here. And notice that Agent Gateway is now running. We can see it via the UI here, but we can actually still interact with it from a programmatic perspective. This is just the data plane itself running locally. So I'm going to head back over to VS Code, and then I'm going to copy this curl. And notice how I'm hitting localhost over port 3000 because that's the port that the gateway is listening on. And then I'm going to open up a new terminal here, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run this curl. Okay. Now notice that went through. I'm going to go ahead and run it again. And right away you can see rate limit exceeded. Why? Because we used more than 1 token for 100 seconds. And then if you want to, you could actually try out the same exact thing with Anthropic. So you just specify Anthropic as the name, as the provider, give a specific model from Anthropic, same routes. And then you're just going to specify the Anthropic API key, and then of course put in any local rate limiting you want to. Now the next thing that we're going to take a look at is the metrics piece of the puzzle. So I have an MCP endpoint YAML here, again, saved right here, but let's go ahead and look at the configuration. Now I'm listening on port 3001. My backend this time is not an LLM, it is an MCP server. And this is a local MCP server, so standard input output. As you can see, here's the protocol here using UVX because it's built in Python. And here's the MCP server here. This is actually one that I created called Cloud Native Architecture. And really the gist here is I just wanted a little MCP server to help me build out architecture diagrams. All right, and as we scroll down here, we have our cores rules set up. We have our allow headers and our methods. So let's go ahead and run Agent Gateway -f for the file name, mcp endpoint.yaml. All right, and as we can see, this is up and running. So I'm going to go to the browser here really quick. I'm going to refresh just because this is technically a new data plane running now as I have a new configuration. I'm going to go to the playground and I'm going to click connect. Okay, so notice here, we now can see a couple of tools within the playground. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up this metrics endpoint here, and we can see all the metrics and the MCP call. So if I go back to the playground and, you know, maybe I do a disconnect and a reconnect, I can now see the new request here. And then I could even take it a step further. I can come in here, I can say build Kubernetes diagram. We'll go ahead, give it a name, just K8S test. List of components, I'll just put a pod in here. I'll click run tool. And then if we look here, we can see an MCP request, a tool was called, and the resource or the tool was build Kubernetes diagram. Now the next piece of the puzzle is model failover. Okay, so the scenario that I have here is I have policies that essentially say retry twice, okay? And then here are all the codes. So like if you get a 400 or 401 or a 403, the goal here is to have only 2 attempts before it fails over to the new model. And then if we scroll down here, I can see I have my Anthropic model, and then I have my OpenAI model. So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to run agent gateway -f model failover.yaml. All right, so again, new agent gateway data plane is running with this configuration. I already have my Anthropic API key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test against this URL here. So I'm going to open up another terminal. I'm going to hit that once. It hits Claude 3.5 because that's the primary model. However, what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to set the Anthropic API key, and I'm just going to make it whatever, just make it incorrect. All right, perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run the curl again. And we can see it now failed over to GPT because the Anthropic API key was incorrect. So those are a couple of ways that we can take a look at overall rate limiting, model failover, and metrics for our agent gateway data plane.